Hi guys, Jordan Arell here, making my daily video on circumcision, and today I'd like to talk a little bit about why I think circumcision trauma is becoming an increasingly big problem and will continue to become an increasingly big problem. Because circumcision has been happening for a while now, increasingly over the past 100 years or so, and throughout most of that time, it seems there hasn't been much literature on the trauma that circumcision causes. Only recently has there been any reporting of it, although I think it's actually still very, very underreported, even though it has exploded as a phenomenon in the past around 30 years. Why? Well, because of the internet. That's the main reason that circumcision trauma has become so much more prominent, is because activism against circumcision has become so much more prominent. The two go hand in hand and will continue to go hand in hand. So let me break that down a little bit. What happens when you become traumatized, when you become really upset about something, as many men are about circumcision, is some dramatic, life-altering, crazy event happens, such as a war veteran enters a war situation with a lot of crazy shit going down, a child suffers sexual abuse, or an adult suffers rape or some other severe physical abuse, or sometimes it could be a car accident, and sometimes it can even be something happening to somebody else. PTSD can actually develop if someone close to you dies, or some traumatic event happens to them, if they're murdered, or if someone close to you gets in a bad car accident. And circumcision or PTSD from circumcision is a lot like that, in that it's something that's happened to someone that you're finding out about, but that someone is you, and so it's even one step less removed from it having happened to somebody else. So when you find out that this extreme act of sexual violence was done to you, often through reading about it online, or through seeing a video of a baby being circumcised, and a lot of that stuff, again, is produced by activists who are trying to say, look at this horrible, horrible thing that's happening, we need to stop it. And unintentionally, unfortunately, the effect of that is often men becoming extremely upset about it and traumatized by it, to where they are no longer often even able to function, because they're so upset about learning what was taken from them, hearing stories of men, trying to get the word out, like, I was circumcised as an adult and this sucks, like it took away all my sensation, is a story that I hear a lot. And so as the activism has become more and more and just keeps on growing exponentially through the internet and through other means, men are becoming increasingly traumatized and upset about it. And they don't really, there's not many people out there saying, this is something we need to deal with. This is a psychological trauma. It's not recognized as such because it's a little bit different than anything we've ever had before in terms of things that cause PTSD. But if you look at how men talk about it, their experiences of it, it's such a classic case of PTSD, and in almost all the men that I hear from, it's uncanny how well it fits the bill. The experience of being disembodied, feeling like you're not in your body, or like it's hard to get in touch with your body, extreme rage, extreme upset, despair, depression, being triggered by things that are even remotely related to it, not being able to stop thinking about it, being constantly on edge and looking out and trying to avoid triggers and trying to escape from anything that makes you think about it, becoming obsessed with it and constantly, some people, who encounter trauma of some kind will then seek out more experiences like that and keep on looking at it more and more and not be able to stop thinking about it. It's all stuff. It's all PTSD. It's so it fits the bill so perfectly, and nobody seems to be recognizing it. Nobody seems to be addressing it. Nobody is telling these men that there's help for them, and it's really, really tragic and sad for me to see that, because I went through that and had such severe trauma from finding out all this information, and going through that, and I got help for it ultimately, and I'm doing a lot better now. I continue to heal more and more, even though I already feel like I'm at 100% in a lot of ways. There's just so much that can be done, but so many men just don't know that. They don't recognize it as trauma. They don't understand it. They think it's just a physical thing, or that the trauma somehow can't be healed. And there's this learned helplessness that they just say there's nothing we can do, and becomes a very entrenched victim mentality that is just, it needs to be addressed somehow. We need to start informing men that they can get help for the circumcision trauma, and then provide that help and gear it specifically towards them, which is what I'm trying to do right now, and am doing. I have 2 clients I'm working with, and I'm developing more materials that I can provide to more men, and I'm gonna then try to figure out how to market that, how to sell it to them, how to I'm making it sound very commercial, how to get them to realize that they can benefit from it, how to show them that it's very, very hard with someone who's in learned helplessness. The classic experiment is a dog who's in a cage, and they kept shocking the dog, and then when they opened the door and the dog could just walk out of the cage, it didn't walk out of the cage, because it was so conditioned to just accept the fact that it was having these horrible shocks sent through its body, that it didn't try to help itself anymore, even when it was possible. And it's going to continue to be a bigger problem as activism is being amped up exponentially over the next year or two. It's going to potentially, I think, become a mainstream issue within the next year. And so we really, really need to start addressing this problem. Yeah, one other thing I want to say is, there's 2 traumas here, really. There's the trauma that happens to the baby, and it's really hard to measure how that affects a man, because it's such an early stage in his life, and it affects him throughout his life. There's very little question that such a severe trauma as that is going to affect you especially when it's done without anesthesia. It's one of the most severely painful things you can do to a human being, one of the most torturous acts, ripping apart the most sensitive part of his body. It's insanity. And the younger age we experience trauma at, the more severe that trauma is, the more it affects us, even if we don't remember it. It changes the way that your brain works. And so that's the one side. And then, again, as I said, throughout the ages, most men haven't been really aware of it and aware of that trauma. But now there's a trauma that they are aware of. That's the discovery of what's happened through the internet and through the education that activism provides. And so we can definitely treat and should focus on treating. And if you want to help me with that, or if you want help with your own trauma, please reach out to me. I'd love to work with you, or if you want to help me develop more stuff, I can use all the help I can get. JordanOrell@hotmail.com, jordanarel@hotmail.com. Because I'm really, really passionate about doing this and finding ways to help those men and to stop it from happening to babies in the future as well. Because we just need to end this. And yeah, treating that birth trauma too in any way that we can. You know, the alexithymia or autism spectrum stuff that it causes that can be debilitating, I would know. And that there's help for all of it. There's, you know, we can go as far as we're willing to accept. You know, the only thing stopping us is our disbelief that we have infinite power, and that as much healing, as much as we want to achieve, we can do it. And so that's why I think it's time that we end circumcision once and for all and get healing for all of the men who are affected. So thanks for watching, guys, and I'll talk to you again tomorrow.